Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, February 9, 2013, 0216 hours. The kind of night when even the wind forgets to move. I was on third shift patrol with Sergeant Ellis, the post half asleep beneath a blanket of fog drifting up from the Missouri River. Visibility was maybe 70 yards at best, enough to see the fence line, not enough to trust it. The mist had swallowed the distant prison lights, leaving only the dull gleam of our headlights carving tunnels through the gray. Command had sent us to check the northern perimeter near the ruins of St. Ignatius Chapel, a section usually off limits except for maintenance or security. A motion sensor there had tripped 3 times in under a minute. The live feed showed movement, but the image broke apart in digital static, as if the signal couldn't hold focus. Ellis said it was probably a coyote. I didn't argue. We logged our position, stepped out, and the cold bit to my gloves, like the air itself didn't want us there. No wind, no hum from the range, no distant hum of generators, just the crunch of our boots on gravel. I swept my beam across the ruins, caught the broken line of foundation stone slick with frost, and thought I saw something shift, just outside the light's reach. Not the slink of an animal, upright, too slow, deliberate. My breath stalled. I keyed my radio, but it answered with nothing but hiss. Ellis whispered, "You see that?" I nodded before I realized I had. That night began as a simple perimeter check, a 10-minute walk through old ground the Army preferred to forget, but it never ended that way. I've been stationed with the 705th Military Police Battalion, under the 15th MP Brigade, for 3 years by then. Most outsiders think of Leavenworth only as the disciplinary barracks, the prison, but the post is older than most towns in Kansas. 2 centuries of soldiers have walked this bluff above the river. Every field, every cellar, every tunnel has its own memory, and not all of them rest easy. Our patrol grid stretched across the northern sector, the cemetery, the river bluff, and a cluster of historic zones long closed to training. 2 patrol vehicles ran alternating shifts, 4 MPs total. Ours was Bravo 21. Around 0200, the desk had called in the alert. Motion detected near the old chapel foundations inside the restricted buffer. 3 activations within 60 seconds made it a response call. Procedure was simple: verify, log, and report. If anything looked off, call for backup. We'd done it 100 times. The terrain, though, always made comms tricky. The post sits high, and the river fog rises fast, bending radio signals and blinding cameras. Static is normal, false triggers are normal, but that sensor didn't stop triggering even after we arrived. Earlier that day, I'd reviewed the week's logs. Wildlife trip, noise complaint, gate alarm reset, nothing unusual. That's how Leavenworth always seemed, uneventful, too quiet for a place built on confinement. Yet, every MP who'd served more than a season knew about the chapel site. Burned down in the 1870s, never rebuilt, fenced off, and left to time. They said its ruins messed with equipment, thermal ghosts, misread frequencies, radios that carried echoes instead of voices. We laughed it off during briefings, blamed moisture and outdated wiring. Until that night, I never thought twice. Ellis had seniority, calm and unshakable. The kind of NCO who'd seen worse overseas and didn't waste nerves on superstition. Run the grid again before we step out, he told me, double-checking our coordinates. Grid 17 Alpha, 50 meters south of the historic boundary fence. We logged it, rolled north past the museum road, and watched the fog thicken until the world was just 2 cones of headlight and the crunch of tires. The post was a skeleton in the dark. Stone quarters, colonial facades, the ghost outlines of barracks lit only by sodium lamps. Even the college building windows were black. I remember thinking how the silence pressed in, how the river smell hung heavy like cold iron. When we parked near the maintenance trail, I kept the truck idling for heat. The headlights caught the fence, and a stretch of unmarked trail leading into trees that swallowed the light whole. We stepped out, the gravel underfoot cracked sharp as glass. Our radios hummed with low static, enough to feel like whispering just beyond range. I tested mine, nothing. Ellis's earpiece gave off a thin feedback tone, a pitch like the ring you hear inside your skull after a blast. We went a comms check, got half a reply, then silence. He shrugged it off, probably the bluff again. We hiked toward the sensor tower, a short walk along a maintenance path half swallowed by weeds. I'd been there once in daylight, old stone foundations half buried in grass, trees climbing through what used to be pews. Tonight it was all shadow and mist. The tower light blinked steady green when we found it. No sign of tampering, no damage to the panel. The desk said it was still reading active motion on their end. That shouldn't have been possible. Ellis leaned close to the control box, checked the wires. "System delay," he muttered, though his tone wasn't convinced. We waited. The only sound was our breathing and the distant drip of thawing frost. Then I heard boots, faint, measured, from somewhere beyond the fence. Not running, just walking. My first thought was another patrol unit, but radio silence said otherwise. I raised my mic, tried to call out, got static. Ellis swept his beam through the fog. Nothing. "We'll log it and head in," he said. But before we moved, the sensor light flicked red again. Both of us saw the movement this time. A human-shaped silhouette gliding across uneven ground where no one should have been. Upright, steady, no flashlight. The cold sliced deeper. My breath came fast. Ellis whispered, "That's not on schedule." We advanced a few steps, close enough to see the fence was older than regulation, rust biting through links. The path beneath our boots wasn't on the GPS overlay. The grid marker for 17 Alpha had vanished from the map, replaced with a red restricted block. Ellis frowned, checking twice. "Probably old perimeter," he said. "They never resurveyed all of it." He wasn't wrong. Half of Leavenworth is built over itself. Layers of history laid down like sediment. Brick quarters from the Civil War still house officers. The Rookery, 1827, still stands, its white porch glowing like a ghost under the moon. They say it's the oldest continuously occupied residence west of the Mississippi. Families come and go, stories stay, footsteps in halls, doors that swing open, lights that flicker. Never in the reports, always in whispers. The chapel ruins were worse, burned by lightning, they said, or maybe lanterns left lit overnight. The army fenced it, called it a memorial. Tour groups visited by day. By night, no one went near. The place was blamed for false readings, for cameras freezing, for the kind of interference you can't chart on a maintenance log. We told ourselves it was the river's humidity. The mind believes what it needs to. Still, standing there in that breathless dark, watching a sensor blink red where nothing moved, I felt the same instinct I'd felt overseas before an ambush, that tightening in the chest when you know the ground isn't right. The cold crept in deeper as we followed the fence line, our breath hanging in thin threads of vapor under the flashlight beams. Ellis led, scanning the ground with slow precision, his silhouette cutting through the fog like a phantom. We reached a small maintenance shed on the site layout, a corrugated metal box with a rusted lock. The seal tag was intact, no signs of tampering, but the soil around it told a different story. Fresh depressions, distinct tread marks, standard issue boot prints, faint, but sharp enough to read. Not ours. The ground was too firm, frozen stiff, meaning those imprints were recent, maybe only hours old. Ellis crouched down, studied them under the beam, and murmured, "Maintenance maybe, but they'd have logged it." He rose slowly, his breath cutting short. He keyed the radio again, only static. Switched channels, still nothing. I tried the vehicle frequency, dead. The silence had weight now, like the air itself was pressing against us. 10 yards ahead, the motion tower's red light blinked again, deliberate as a pulse. We hadn't reset it. "This isn't right," Ellis muttered, and hearing that from him made my stomach tighten. We returned to the vehicle, the fog trailing after us like something alive. "Oh!" Inside, the heater hummed while we watched the patrol laptop flicker with glitchy camera feed. The thermal display showed only our 2 heat signatures, nothing else. But the motion alert kept flashing, active. The desk wouldn't respond. We logged the data manually, time, grid, duration, and Ellis decided we'd loop the perimeter once before closing the call. "If it's a fault, we'll catch it in pattern," he said. We drove toward the cemetery road, the old path that curved behind the ruins. The terrain there was uneven, marked with crumbling stone walls left from another century. The headlights swept across them, turning every shadow into movement. I could see the faint glow of the prison floodlights on the horizon, barely visible through the haze. The new disciplinary barracks stood like a fortress in the distance, detached from everything human. Between us and that place lay acres of dead ground, woods, abandoned training fields, the sort of terrain where time stops caring. We parked again near the curve and stepped out. The fog had thinned into patches now, thin veils drifting between the trees. The air was sharp enough to taste. I could see the square outline of the old foundation for the first time, a low border of stones, overgrown and slick. A sign, stuck in the dark red, "Historic Site, do not enter." Ellis took pictures for documentation, the shutter sound echoing strangely flat. I kept the flashlight trained on the tree line, waiting for something to break the stillness. But what unnerved me wasn't noise, it was the absence of it. No hum from the generators, no insects, no far-off highway drone. Even the river had gone silent, just air and heartbeat. We finished the sweep, marked the log, and turned back to the truck. That's when the dash lights blinked off for 2 seconds, and came back on. The engine never stopped. Ellis frowned. "Power relay glitch," he said automatically, but the way his hand tightened on the wheel said otherwise. We drove back toward the main road, both of us listening for anything through the static of the radio. The moment we cleared the curve, the motion alarm screamed again. Same grid, same pattern. 50 meters behind us, Ellis muttered, staring at the feed. The map pulsed red where we just stood. He braked hard, headlights off, both of us staring through the windshield into the mist. The feed crackled to static, then cleared. No movement. The alert reset itself. Ellis typed into the log. No visual contact. Repeated sensor activation post-clearance. We waited a few minutes longer, just sitting there in the half-dark, the fog curling against the windows like it wanted in. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. When we finally left, neither of us said much. Only later did we see what the vehicle camera had caught, the faint outline of a shape near the fence, standing still as stone, its edges lost in the mist. Not a blur, not a trick of light, something there, upright, watching. We hadn't seen it then, but the camera had. That image never made it into any official report. Command later labeled it Incident 17, filed under technical malfunction. They said the sensor feed had looped old footage. They said the shape was compression noise. We both knew that was a lie. The following night, they sent us back. No mention of the prior report, no warning, just orders to recheck the same grid. It was as if the system wanted to erase itself by repeating the loop. I asked Ellis if he'd turned in the footage. "Yes, took it," he said. "Didn't log it back." That wasn't procedure. Every clip, no matter how minor, stayed archived, always. But he didn't push it. Neither did I. We rolled out again at 2300 hours. The Missouri night brittle with cold. No fog this time. The stars sharp. The river black glass under the bluff. The kind of night that should have felt calm, safe even. It didn't. At 0023 hours, the desk pinned us. Same grid, same tower, motion active. "They want visual confirmation before calling maintenance," Ellis said, flipping the laptop around. He forced a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Let's end this one clean." 5 minutes later, we were 5 minutes later. The path crunched under our boots, frost glittering in the beams. The tower light glowed steady green. The desk feed still flagged motion. Ellis reset the power manually. 2 minutes passed in perfect stillness. Then the red alert snapped on. We both stepped back, the air humming faintly around us. The alarm changed pattern. 3 short tones, a pause, then 2 long. I knew that code. Manual test signal. Someone had to input it directly from the control box. Ellis froze. The panel was sealed, the tag unbroken. No one else was out there. He called the dusk. This time the radio caught signal. "Control, Robert S21. Unauthorized test pattern for motion tower, grid 17-alpha. Any scheduled personnel on site. 30 seconds of silence." Then, negative. "No authorized maintenance in your grid." The words dropped into the air like stones. Protocol was clear. Treat it as possible breach. Ellis called for backup to stage near Museum Road while we advanced to verify. The temperature gauge read 42, but my breath came out white as smoke. We moved down the slope toward the foundation. The red light on the tower winked out. Then, one by one, the fence lights followed, each dying in perfect sequence, east to west, as if someone flipped invisible switches. Total darkness swallowed the sight, except for our flashlights. "Power cut?" Ellis whispered. I shook my head. Not like that. Leavenworth's grid never sequenced failure. Even main outages came random. We pressed forward, beams tight. My light skimmed the top of the foundation wall, the frost glinting like old bone. Then I caught something. A pale shimmer above the stones, shifting slightly. Fabric, maybe plastic. It moved once, like caught in wind, but there was no wind. I focused the beam, and it vanished. Just gone. "You saw that?" Alice asked force low. I nodded. The ground where it had been was untouched. No debris, no prints, nothing. The radios hissed, then cleared to a faint voice repeating our call sign. Not the desk. Lower, mechanical, distorted like it came through a damaged filter. Then silence. Ellis keyed the mic. Repeat transmission. No reply. The static returned and bled into the wind. We waited 10 minutes. Then without warning, the entire perimeter lit back up. All lights on. The tower rebooted itself. Green steady. Ellis wrote the time down by hand. I took photos of everything. Fence, soil, tower panel. When we got back in the vehicle, the system console displayed an alert. Motion detected. Camera unavailable. The timestamp read 0029 hours. The same minute, the lights had gone dead. Ellis didn't say a word. He just turned the truck around, headlights off. At first light, Recommend inspection at first light. Command logged it as equipment fault again. But we both knew that night we hadn't been alone in that fog. 2 nights later, they sent us out again. Same sector, same quiet denial hanging over the whole thing. Command claimed maintenance had repaired the sensor board and replaced the faulty circuit. Their report said humidity caused false readings, which didn't make sense. The air had been bone dry for days, brittle enough to crack your lips. Ellis didn't argue, but I saw the tension in his jaw as he reviewed the assignment sheet. Environmental interference, he muttered, repeating the excuse like he wanted to hear it sound true. We rolled out at 2200 hours, passing through the calm shell of the base, the old brick quarters, the staff college, the narrow roads lined with skeletal trees. The night was cleaner this time. No fog, no frost. Stars scattered sharp across the sky. Everything about it felt deceptively normal. We hit our usual gate checks, then housing, then turned north toward the ruins. Ellis kept the radio on secondary channel, avoiding the chatter from the watch desk. "I want a clean line if anything happens again," he said. I nodded. Neither of us said what we both knew, that we were going back into something that didn't behave by regulation or reason. By 2300, we reached grid 17-alpha. The headlights swept the open field, revealing nothing but grass and broken stone. The ruins looked lifeless, the fence unbent. I brought out the thermoscope and scanned. Cold, all of it. No heat signatures, no motion, just static gray. We parked and dismounted. As soon as my boots hit the ground, I felt it. Thick, heavy air pressing close. Not cold exactly, but dense, like walking into a sealed chamber. The kind of stillness that doesn't belong outdoors. No echo, no sound bounce. Even our footsteps seemed swallowed before they landed. We advanced to the fence. The new sensor panel glowed a clean, steady green. Then it blinked once, just a single pulse of red. Ellis stopped, stared. "You see that?" he asked. I nodded. Before either of us could move, the radio emitted the tone, not static this time, but a deep mechanical hum, low and sustained, like an alarm buried under distance. It lasted 5 seconds, maybe less, then cut. I called it into the desk, reported an unrecognized signal tone. The operator checked system status. "Negative," she said. "No active alarms on post." Ellis asked her to manually verify our grid. She confirmed it as clear and inactive. While he was still talking, I walked 10 meters down the fence, scanning the tree line. My light cut through rows of trunks like red bones. That's when I saw movement. Slow, deliberate, shadow pacing parallel to us, just inside the trees. Human height, human gait. I raised my voice, steady and trained. "Military police, identify yourself." No answer. Alice came to my side. The figure kept moving, same rhythm, like mirroring us. When we stopped, it stopped. The fog wasn't back, but the air shimmered faintly, enough to distort the outline. You could tell it wasn't a trick of branches. Ellis keyed his mic, voice low and crisp. "Possible intruder inside restricted zone. Grid 17 Alpha, moving east to west. Single individual." The desk answered immediately this time. "Negative movement on cameras. All feeds show clear." We looked again. The shape was still there, pacing between the trunks. We started forward, closing distance toward the fence, my flashlight being locked on it. It froze. 2 seconds later, it turned toward us, slow, deliberate, and faced our direction. My chest went tight. Ellis whispered, "Stay sharp." The thing didn't move. Then, all at once, our radios cut. Dead silence. No static, no signal. The kind of silence that feels like someone pulling the plug on the world. We stood there, waiting. My light stayed fixed. Nothing. The figure was gone. Just gone. We jumped the shallow ditch and crossed into the tree line, sweeping every angle. 5 minutes of searching. No prints, no bent grass, no trace. The soil was too solid to hide tracks. When the radios came back, Ellis spoke first. Calm, professional. "Sector secure. Negative contact." His voice was steady, but his hand trembled when he logged the time. I didn't question it. We didn't mention the figure at all. As we headed back to the truck, Ellis said quietly, "We'll let the footage talk this time." By dawn, we knew the footage wasn't going to talk to anyone. The body cams recorded fine until the exact moment our radios died. Then both feeds went black for 60 seconds, exactly 1 minute, before resuming like nothing happened. The tower logs showed no power loss. The blackout didn't exist on paper. That was the first time I understood how easily truth can be formatted out of existence. Ellis and I signed the report, filed it as routine patrol, and said nothing more. But from that night on, every time the call board lit up, every time the radio clicked to life, I could feel that static before it came. The following week, command called a meeting for all MPs assigned to night rotation. The operations officer looked exhausted, his eyes hollow under the fluorescence. He said there have been multiple sensor anomalies across 3 northern grids, not just ours. Same time frame, between 0020 and 0030. He pointed at a map projected on the wall, red marks strung in a perfect line running east to west from the old chapel site toward the river. Network interference, he said, his voice too clipped to believe. Probably cross-feed from civilian towers across the state line. Everyone nodded, but not one person in that room bought it. Leavenworth's systems are sealed from civilian networks. Hardline encrypted, air-gapped. No cross-feed was possible. After the briefing, Ellis pulled me aside, his jaw tight. They wiped it, he said. The footage from our second incident, Dawn. Archive shows file not found. I checked the records myself. The entry existed, but the storage ID read null. Same with 2 other patrols that week. Gone. The desk said they were under review. The word tasted like dust. We went back out again, per schedule. Grid 17 Alpha, every 3rd night. By then, routine had turned ritual. The same drive north, the same chill rising from the river, the same sense of being watched by a history that refused to die. Our next patrol in that grid came on February 16th. The wind had shifted north, carrying fine snow that barely touched the ground. The trees glittered under the moon, brittle and sharp. Our truck creaked as the temperature dropped. Ellis brought the thermoscope again. I carried the logbook and comms. We walked the fence like we'd done a dozen times. The sensor tower blinked steady green. Everything normal. I remember thinking maybe it was finally over. Then the radio beeped. 2 sharp tones. Priority call. The desk's voice came thin and strained. Unscheduled activation. Same grid. Multiple sensors detecting movement eastbound. I froze. The words multiple sensors hit like a pulse. Ellis leaned toward me. How many? He asked into the mic. 4 distinct signatures, the operator said. All inside the restricted zone. He whispered, could be maintenance convoy. Ask if they're tracking it. Negative. No personnel logged. No vehicles. Nothing scheduled. We killed our lights, waited. The sensors kept tracking. Those 4 blips moving in a perfect line toward us. My heart pounded so hard it felt audible. The ground ahead stayed empty. No sound, no wind. Then, as quickly as it started, the signal stopped. The system reset. All clear, the desk reported, voice trembling. Ellis switched on his flashlight and swept the fence. His beam froze. You seen this? He whispered. There, on the other side of the wire, faint figures, 4 of them, stood shoulder to shoulder, evenly spaced. Not solid shapes, but shadows with form. Their edges hazy, like they were pressed against the fog itself. He called out, military police, identify yourselves. No response. The shapes didn't move, didn't breathe, just existed. I raised the camera and took 3 shots, the flash bursting white against the fence. When the light cleared, the figures were gone. The beam fell on untouched frost. Ellis crossed closer, scanning every inch. Then he stopped. Tracks, he said. Prints in the frost. Boot-shaped, deep, fresh. They led from the fence toward the old foundation. Perfect spacing. Halfway across the open ground, they ended. Vanished mid-stride. We followed them until they stopped, our lights trembling against the emptiness. Ellis crouched and touched one. The frost beneath had melted slightly, warm to the touch. He looked up at me, voice low. Someone's here. We radioed the desk again, clear channel this time. Before the operator could answer, a man's voice came through instead. Calm, aged, distant, do not approach. Then static. When the desk came back, they swore they hadn't transmitted anything on our frequency. We logged the voice, the footprints, the time. Ellis marked coordinates, eyes scanning the dark. We didn't speak on the drive back. None of it made sense anymore. But by then, we'd stopped expecting it to. The following week, the post shifted into a strange quiet that felt rehearsed, like everyone had agreed not to ask questions. Then came word from Ellis that a classified historical team had arrived that morning. Civilians escorted by officers from Engineering Command. They weren't in uniform, no name tapes, no insignia. Their trucks carried ground-penetrating radar units and sealed metal cases stamped with hazard codes. They headed straight toward the old chapel ruins. The area was instantly sealed off, under the guise of infrastructure repair. For the next 2 weeks, half the northern perimeter went dark. No patrols, no training runs, no clearance for MPs. Officially, they were stabilizing subsurface cables. Unofficially, something had been found. When the sector reopened, the maps were different. The grid lines had shifted. 17 Alpha was gone. replaced with a blank rectangle labeled Restricted Zone. The sensor tower wasn't listed anymore. Ellis stared at the new overlay, his finger tracing the absence. "We're going back," he said finally. "They buried something." I didn't argue. We'd both seen enough to know this was more than electrical maintenance. That morning after our shift, we signed out a vehicle from the motor pool. Routine perimeter familiarization. No questions asked. Dawn crept cold over the Kansas plains we drove north, the Missouri River glinting silver behind the fog. The road wound past housing and the museum, empty except for tire tracks leading toward the locked gate. A new sign hung there. Authorized personnel only. The chain was freshly welded. Ellis parked, engine idling, his eyes scanning the tree line. "Something's buried out here," he repeated, quieter this time, like he was admitting it to himself. We walked the fence line slowly, our boots sinking into soft patches where the earth had been disturbed. The ground near the ruins looked recently turned, compacted but even. You could still see the difference in soil color, fresh filled darker than the surrounding clay. Heavy tire treads marked a wide arc around the site. "Construction trucks," Ellis muttered. He stopped at a rectangular patch, maybe 15 feet long. "This is where the tower stood." We crouched. No bolts, no wiring, just smooth dirt pressed flat. I brushed away a corner of soil until something metallic caught the light. A small square plate, buried shallow. Ellis used his knife to free it, the metal cold and streaked with grime. Etched into the surface was the number 17,001, the same identification code as our old motion tower. He stared at it, exhaling slow. They didn't move it, they buried it. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then we walked toward the ruins again. The air smelled faintly of ozone, like the moment after lightning. The foundation stones looked different, shifted, rearranged. Stakes with twine marked a rough perimeter. Inside, a shallow pit had been dug and filled again. Ellis stepped into the depression, his boots crunching on loose soil. "Someone reopened this," he said. Kneeling, he brushed dirt away until metal scraped against his glove. A curved fragment came loose, a piece of an old canteen, blackened and warped. Faint initials etched into the surface read TB. Beside it, a stake carried a tag with the year 1875, the same date as the chapel fire. We stared at each other. It could have been nothing, just a relic from the original burn, but the metal was warm, unnaturally so. Even in freezing air, it radiated steady heat. Ellis laid it on the ground. After a minute, the warmth faded. "We should not be here," he said softly. I agreed. We started back toward the truck when the radio crackled. Sharp and clear, too clear. A voice came through, flat and authoritative. "Bravo 2-1, remain at your position." Ellis froze mid-step. "Identify yourself," he answered instantly. The same order repeated word for word, same tone, same cadence. It was his own voice. I felt the air drain from my chest. We switched to command frequency. No response. The channel was clean, like the message had come from inside the radio itself. The air went still again, heavy enough to muffle sound. Behind us, movement. We turned toward the ruins. 3 figures were walking side by side across the clearing. Slow, synchronized, the same spacing as before. The light caught their silhouettes. Old uniforms, outdated jackets, round caps with no insignia. They stopped halfway, perfectly still. Ellis whispered, "That's not possible." My hand hovered near my holster, though instinct told me a weapon wouldn't matter. The figures stood in silence, facing us across open ground. Then one raised an arm in a slow, deliberate signal. The radio flared again, "Remain at your position." Only this time it wasn't the earlier voice. It was Ellis, his exact tone, his exact words from seconds before. His expression went blank. "That's me," he said, barely audible. The figures took one more synchronized step forward. The ground shuddered beneath us, faint but real, like something deep below had shifted in its sleep. Then the shapes vanished, not dispersed, gone. No fade, no blur, just absence. Ellis finally breathed. "We're leaving." We didn't speak until we reached command. Ellis handed his handwritten report directly to the operations officer without a word. The man skimmed it, nodded, and said only, "Grid secure, dismissed." That night, for the first time in years, I couldn't sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw them, the 3 figures standing in fog, unmoving, watching. And in the stillness between breaths, I kept hearing that same phrase, echoing through static, in Ellis's own voice, "Remain at your position." The next morning, the base went into what they called a localized restriction. It wasn't a lockdown, just enough to make movement north of the Loop Road off limits to anyone without written authorization. No one said the word investigation. but the atmosphere carried it in silence. Ellis and I were reassigned to administrative duty inside the operations building, pulled off the patrol roster without explanation. On paper, we were processing vehicle maintenance reports and equipment inventories, but it felt like containment. They wanted us inside, under watch, away from the northern grid. From our desks, we could see the convoys rolling through the restricted gate, unmarked trucks escorted by unfamiliar officers, civilian contractors in plain clothes, unloaded gear stamped GPR and GEO-SUVEY. The cargo manifest listed geological terms: seismic imaging, subsurface anomaly, containment protocol. Ellis kept watching them through the blinds. "They're not fixing cables," he whispered one afternoon. "They're mapping something." He wasn't wrong. The trucks came and went for 3 days straight, always at dawn, always escorted by armed MPs we didn't recognize. On the 4th day, a lieutenant colonel from Engineering Command called us in. His uniform was spotless, but his eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep. He thanked us for our thorough documentation of the incidents and told us the site was now under environmental review. He handed each of us a non-disclosure packet, told us to sign the transfer form for all materials related to Grid 17 Alpha, photos, notes, recordings, everything. We signed because refusing wasn't an option. The colonel gathered the folders without another word, leaving us with the hollow sense that we just erased our own work. That night, Ellis showed up at my quarters. He looked pale, his uniform wrinkled like he hadn't slept. "I can't turn it off," he said. "What?" I asked. "The voice," he whispered. "It keeps replaying in my head. My own voice, giving that order. It won't stop." I didn't know what to say. I told him it was stress, residual shock, anything to make it sound explainable. He nodded, pretending to believe me, but the look in his eyes said he knew better. 2 nights later, the north grid power flickered for 12 seconds. Backup generators kicked in immediately, and the desk logged it as temporary substation interference. Routine. Except during that 12-second blackout, every sensor in the restricted zone activated simultaneously. The same pattern, east to west, 4 signatures moving in formation. Command didn't dispatch patrols this time. Instead, they launched a maintenance drone with a live camera feed. We watched from the operations office as the video streamed in. A slow pass over the old foundation, the ground dark and uneven under floodlight. 30 seconds in, the feed glitched. First static, then total loss of signal. When it came back, the drone was on the ground, lens tilted upward at a pale sky. The last frame showed footprints in a ring around it, 4 distinct sets, evenly spaced, perfectly symmetrical. By 0400 hours, by 040 hours, the engineering team withdrew from the site. Their trucks were loaded with sealed metal containers, the kind used for hazardous retrievals. They left before sunrise. No one said what they found. Well, the next day, Ellis didn't report for duty. His gear was still in his room, his sidearm locked, his bed unslept in. The desk called it a no-show, then unexplained absence. By evening, a different MP unit searched his quarters. The file shifted classification overnight, from missing person to voluntary absence. Case closed within 24 hours. No further inquiry authorized. It didn't make sense. Ellis wasn't the type to walk away from anything, especially with only 3 months left on his rotation. When I pressed the operations officer, he said quietly, "Let it go." Then he handed me new orders. Transfer to a post in Missouri, effective immediately. I packed in silence. There was no mention of Ellis in the farewell briefing, no replacement assignment for his shift, no acknowledgement that he'd ever existed. My last morning at Fort Leavenworth, I drove past the north gate. The restricted zone was still fenced off, guarded by temporary security with blank patches on their uniforms. The fog had returned, rolling low across the ground like a tide reclaiming old land. Weeks later, I checked the digital incident logs, habit mostly. Grid 17-Alpha was gone, erased clean. The zones around it were renumbered as if the old map never existed. Even the St. Ignatius Chapel site was now listed as Preservation Study Area, access prohibited. Every trace of that sector had been rewritten out of official reality. But what they couldn't erase were the sounds that still played in my head at night. The mechanical echo of the radio, the order repeated in Ellis's calm, steady voice, "Remain at your position." Sometimes it came faint, half-dreamed. Other times it was clear, as if he were standing right beside me again in the fog. I'd wake with the taste of cold metal in my mouth, heart pounding like it was still that night on the bluff. I told myself it was memory. I told myself it was nothing more than stress echoing through the years. But even then, I knew it was a lie. Some things don't stop transmitting just because you stop listening. After my reassignment, I tried to bury Fort Leavenworth in the same drawer as every other base I'd served on. Just another posting, another rotation. But ghosts don't file away neatly. Weeks into the new station, I started digging through shared security archives, half out of habit, half out of denial. Grid 17-Alpha wasn't there. Not in the patrol logs, not in the maintenance folders, not even in archived map overlays. It had been erased, line by line, like a typo the Army refused to admit. What did remain were empty gaps that said more than words could. Serial numbers without corresponding inventory, timestamps without events, entire equipment lists struck through but never replaced. 5 sets of sensors, 2 thermals, 3 generators, all checked out during those weeks at Leavenworth. None ever logged back in. Supply records marked the discrepancy as command inspection in progress. I knew what that meant, headquarters jurisdiction. Once that code appeared, no one below colonel rank would ever see the truth again. 2 months later, during a training rotation, I ran into an old NP from our unit. He'd stayed behind after my transfer. Over a beer, I asked about Ellis. The man's eyes dropped to his hands. They said he went AWOL, he said quietly. No one believes it. He told me patrols had stopped going anywhere near the chapel site. The area was fenced again, this time with warning signs about unstable ground. Then he added something that froze me mid-swallow. A week after my departure, another team had come through, Army Historical Command, working alongside officers from the Combined Arms Center. They weren't engineers. They carried paper maps, soil samplers, and old-fashioned measuring tools. No digital gear at all. They spent 3 days at the site, mapping by hand, then sealed it permanently. The Post newsletter called it Routine Preservation of Historical Landmarks, a single paragraph that buried an entire story. I stopped asking questions after that. You can feel when an invisible line has been drawn, and what waits beyond it isn't meant for you. Still, the mind repays what it can't close. Sometimes I'd catch myself expecting Ellis to walk across the motor pool at dawn, coffee in hand, the way he used to. But he never did. You can't talk about things like this in uniform. The Army has no code for hauntings. 1 year later, I got a misrouted bulletin in my inbox, an internal maintenance schedule listing training restrictions across several bases. Leavenworth was on it. The note beside it read, ground instability in historical area, possible subsurface cavity, no personnel access authorized until further notice. It was varied between a dozen other mundane entries, but the coordinates were exact. I knew that grid by heart. They'd found something below that ruin, something big enough to justify sealing it off. I printed the memo and kept it folded in my notebook for years. Maybe I wanted proof that what happened hadn't been a shared hallucination, that command had acknowledged a danger in the only language it spoke. Bureaucratic understatement. Every so often, I checked the archived digital traces, the motion pings, the blackout timestamps, the power fluctuation reports. Most were deleted, but metadata lingers like echoes. The patterns were still there. 3 short beeps, pause, too long. The same rhythm the tower had played the night everything shut down. The same sequence as Ellis's voice, remain at your position. I stopped sleeping well after that. Each night I dream of frost melting in perfect boot prints, of red lights blinking through fog, of the hollow weight of silence after the radios died. It wasn't fear exactly, it was unfinished duty, a pull towards something unresolved. Sometimes, driving past quiet installations at night, I'd spot motion sensors flashing along fence lines and feel that old instinct kick in, the urge to log coordinates, to call it in, to wait for a voice that would never answer. Once, on a late run through Missouri, the static from my cruiser's radio broke into a tone, 3 short, too long. I nearly drove off the road. When it cleared, the display showed no transmission source. The log later marked it as atmospheric interference. Maybe it was, maybe not. What unsettles me most isn't what we saw that winter, but how neatly the Army folded it into nothing. Reports sealed, names erased, maps redrawn. They built silence over it like a second foundation. But silence doesn't kill memory, it preserves it. You can still feel the pulse under the soil, the weight of centuries refusing to stay buried. Sometimes late at night, I'll play the last dispatch tape I kept from that tour. Static mostly, but in the background, faint as breath, the sound of boots crunching ground. 4 steps, pause, 4 more. Perfect rhythm. I tell myself, it's interference, an echo from the recorder. But deep down, I know better. Some signals never stop transmitting. They just wait for the right frequency to be heard again. It's been more than a decade since that winter at Fort Leavenworth, and I've served on enough bases since to know how easily time rewrites truth. Most places fade once you leave them. The sounds, the smells, the rhythm of duty, but not that one. Leavenworth lingers like the aftertaste of metal. I still remember the feel of the bluff air at night, the hum of the river below, and that suffocating sense that something beneath the surface was alive and listening. Memory plays tricks, but not that many. The mind forgets details. It doesn't invent weight, and the weight of that ground was real. Every so often I drive near Kansas for work. I tell myself I'm just passing through, but my hand's always slow, near the highway that skirts the northern perimeter. The base looks the same from a distance. The old brick facades, the manicured lawns, the illusion of order. But the north end is different now. Reinforced fencing, new floodlights, a wall that wasn't there before. I once stopped at a gas station outside the gate and struck up conversation with a young MP, barely old enough to shave. I asked if they still patrolled near the chapel ruins. He looked at me blankly. "There's no ruins out there, sir," he said. "That's an environmental zone." He said it casually, like it had always been that way. But I saw it in his eyes. He didn't know he was repeating. He'd inherited a lie, and he believed it. That night I sat in my car on the shoulder, watching the perimeter lights blink in perfect sequence. I could almost trace the line, east to west, the same pattern that used to mark the motion alerts. For a moment, I thought I heard a faint echo in the static of my dash radio, the same 3 short, 2 long pulse we heard from the tower. I stayed by whirled and put a single unmatching path. The fog rolled in like it used to, creeping across the fields until the base lights blurred to halos. Somewhere out there, beneath that ground, was the thing they dug up, the thing they buried again. The Army calls it containment. I call it unfinished business. I don't know what they found, but I know they're still watching it. Bases don't build new walls for ghosts. Years later, during a logistics conference, I saw something on a slide that stopped me cold. An engineering officer was giving a briefing on infrastructure hazards at historic installations, soil shifts, heat anomalies, foundation decay. One of the coordinate sets flashed across the projector, unlabeled, meant as an example, but I recognized it instantly. Grid 17-alpha. I waited until after the session and asked him about it. He hesitated, then said quietly, "Residual heat signatures below frost level, not geological. We sealed it. Some old ground holds energy, Sergeant. We just don't disturb it." Then he walked away. His tone wasn't warning, it was acceptance, like it was something older than the Army itself. When I got home that night, I pulled up the latest satellite overlay of Fort Leavenworth. The chapel marker was gone, the access road rerouted. Only the old cemetery remained, fenced and forgotten. The restricted area was listed as Historic Preservation Zone, a neat phrase that hides a graveyard of truths. I printed the map and pinned it above my desk. It's not obsession, it's memory maintenance. Every soldier learns to keep track of what command erases. Sometimes I wonder if what we saw was ever meant to be visible. Maybe those figures in formation weren't intruders but reflections, echoes of soldiers who never rotated home, caught in the ground's memory. Maybe Leavenworth's soil remembers better than people do. Every post has its ghosts, but that one keeps them organized, marching, disciplined, silent. The Army teaches you that everything can be explained: interference, malfunctions, atmospheric anomalies. But explanation is just another kind of camouflage. Some things aren't broken, they're waiting. I've stopped talking about Ellis to anyone who didn't know him. The system erased his name cleanly. No discharge record, no casualty notice, no next of kin entry. It's as if he was never issued to begin with. But I still hear him sometimes. Not in dreams, awake, in the quiet between radio static and memory, that steady, calm voice that used to cut through fog and fear. The same words that ended everything remain at your position. I've tried to tell myself it's just an echo burned into my head from that night, but the tone changes. Sometimes it sounds closer, sometimes it sounds behind me. So I listen, not out of fear, but because part of me still belongs there, standing beside Ellis at the fence line, flashlight steady, staring into a field where the past breathes through the dirt. Maybe he's still out there, still holding position, in whatever way men like him do when they refuse to leave their post. Maybe that's what Fort Leavenworth really is, a fortress built over layers of unfinished duty. Every command, every structure, every silence stacked on top of the last, until the ground itself hums with obedience. I used to think history ends when the paper runs out, but I know better now. History doesn't end. It just waits for the next man on shift. When the world goes quiet, when the fog hangs low and the radios flicker, I can still feel that moment before sound returns, the held breath of the earth. I think about Ellis, about those figures, about the canteen that stayed warm in freezing air. I think about the voice that learned to sound like us. And sometimes, when I'm driving through another base at night, the sensors along the fences blink red in the mist. I find myself slowing down, waiting, listening, because deep down I know what's coming next. Static, then breath, then that familiar voice, patient and calm, whispering through the dark, remain at your position. Some stories fade when the lights come back on. This one doesn't. Fort Leavenworth isn't just haunted by what's buried under its ground. It's haunted by the silence that keeps it covered. If you ever drive past those Kansas bluffs at night and see a red light blinking through the fog, don't stop, don't listen, and whatever you do, don't answer the voice if it tells you to stay. If this story chilled you, subscribe to Captain Rubble, where the ghosts of war never rest, and every classified file hides another nightmare. New missions drop every week. Stay sharp, keep your lights low, and I'll see you on the next patrol.